And we continue to read from the Gospel of John. And the story we read today is at the site that, unlike many locations in the Bible, where we have pilgrimage sites today that were assigned to stories hundreds of years after the stories occurred, we know where these events occurred. You see, there were three main roads that could be taken between Galilee in the north and Jerusalem in the south. One was in the west, that would have taken a traveler closer to the Mediterranean and through Emmaus and the plain of Megiddo, a road that was somewhat infamous from bandits. It was also the road upon which we read in the Bible of the armies of the great empires engaging in battles. This way was cooler in temperature, but took the better part of a week to travel. In the east, there was a road that crisscrossed the Jordan and forced you to climb into the mountains. Samaritan-Jewish tensions were particularly strong. It was the safer path, but it was hot, and again, took a week to travel. In the middle was a direct path that led right through the middle of Samaritan territory. For most Jews living in Galilee and being expected to travel to Jerusalem by foot for 3 feasts a year, the most frequent road was the one in the middle. It took half the time, and people could not afford to spend an extra 3 weeks each year taking the long way around. So, contrary to popular belief, Jesus and his disciples taking this route was not some outside the norm act of rebellion. It was just what people did. And something people also did in ancient Israel, as we hear throughout the Bible, was worried about water. In Buffalo, we have always had abundant water supplied by the Great Lakes, and so when we worry about water, it is about having too much of it, or what is in it. But like in the Southwest, in Israel, and the Middle East, water is not guaranteed. If the rains come, then people could live and flourish. They didn't. Plants, animals, and people died. One way to mitigate this was to dig wells. Now with wells, you have to dig down to wherever the water table is. At some point, you are probably going to hit water, especially if you're in a valley between mountains, which is where Sychar was located. But in a land where the rain comes some years and doesn't come others, the water table is not in the top 20 feet of the surface like it is in Buffalo. It could be over 100 feet down. When you had to dig this deep to get to water, the wells often would also take in surface water. Storm waters running down from the hills and picking up animal and human wastes along the way. And that was true of this well that Jesus stops in today's story. Now, as I said, we are certain of where this well was. This is because of something the woman says. You see, Sychar, as a place name, does not pop up in ancient documents. But Jacob's well was a place that was known to the Samaritans and ancient Judeans, and before them the ancient Israelites. While the well itself does not appear in Hebrew scriptures, Jacob's settling on the land does, and settling in a place without water meant digging a well. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob settled in Canaan at the base of Mount Gerizim. It's from this place that Israel first claimed identity. It was this place that was given to Ephraim, second born but favored son of Joseph, the favorite son of Jacob and Rachel. It was this place referred to in Hebrew scriptures as Shechem that was the center of religious and political power in the north, the place of the rival claim to Jerusalem for authority. And it was this place that was razed to the ground by the Assyrians, the inhabitants massacred and many of the survivors forced from their lands. But it was also this place that became the center of the Samaritan identity, as the descendants of those survivors intermarried with foreign peoples that the Assyrians installed on the lands and claimed a pre-Davidic form of Judaism as their own. And so in this moment, we see God, through Jesus, healing a breach, reaching out to reclaim the lost tribes of Israel as God's people. And in doing so, he points to the well, a source of life but also source of death. Giving water that is necessary for all beings to live, but also carrying with it pathogens and requiring hard labor, pull that water up from 150 feet below. And he points to himself as living water. Now, what does he mean by living water? Well, it was a phrase that existed in this part of the world and something that was treasured greatly. Living water was water that moved. It could be the water that came flowing down from the hills and formed creeks and rivers and brought greenery and life with it. There was a term also associated with artesian wells. Artesian wells are those wells where the water from below is under pressure, and when it finds a break in the rock, it will burst up from the ground without a well needing to be bored down to it. Being under pressure, it is water that is not contaminated. It is water that is pure and filtered and life-giving. It is spring water, and that is who Jesus is. Jesus is the source of living water. He is the spring that brings true life into the world, life free from death and destruction, from the impurities of life in this world. When we follow Jesus, we step into the breach and heal the hate, bitterness, and divisions that humanity has created, and bring love, mercy, and peace, and bring true life to all those we meet. Amen.